welcome to another episode of Queen Tone. I am
Queen
your host.
Tone.
That's become like a thing now. Queen Tone.
Queen Town.
I am your host Dana.
And I am your other host, Nina I.
All right.
That's my stage name, y'all. Don't judge me.
So how's your week going so far?
Girl, busy. I don't know my up from down. We recording about an hour late because I had to pick the kids up from school, go to work, try to find parking.
The kid is a puppy.
Yeah, same difference. I mean, honestly. No, I'm just kidding.
A dog,
but
a
yeah,
toddler,
it's just
same thing.
same thing. I yell at Telly like she's a toddler.
You do.
Crazy. A lot has been going on. I'm really just trying to do my best. That's it. That's all I can say. I'm just trying to do my best. What about you?
Another same week of working from, like, I wish I at least had one day to go out to like work somewhere else. It's the same. I mean, the work days are different, but it's also like I tend to work more just because there's no need to like get up.
There's
and get
no
on the
separation.
Train. Yeah, it's just, I can keep doing this. So yeah, it's pretty much the same.
So what are they doing with y'all office space?
It's just sitting there. They've started a plan where we can schedule time to go in to like get our stuff, because I literally left one day and just never went back. So you can come in to get your stuff, but you still can't come in to like work or anything like that. So yeah, it's just working. Like today for lunch, I took a lunch break and cooked dinner. I was like, I was in Zoom meetings all day. Like I need some type of break. So yeah, I made a whole ass dinner.
That's hilarious. I went into the office. So we go into the office at least once a week. Depending on what your job title is. Like sometimes you might have to go in more. So today was my day, and I just feel like, why did I pick Mondays? Like I picked Mondays thinking that like, oh yeah, I'll start my week, I'll go into work, like get stuff done, then I'll have the second half, the end of my week, I don't have to worry about going into work. But now I'm just like, Lord, maybe I should have picked Wednesday.
Yeah, but I said that sounds like a bad idea.
Yeah.
Because Mondays are already a struggle.
I know.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm making it. I am counting the days till this damn election is over and people stay off my phone and out of my inbox.
Oh yeah.
I just feel like a lot of things are very hostile now. Even some of these messages like, "Bitch, you voting?" Like,
I know.
It's just
very like, stop texting me, please,
right,
before I block you.
Very hostile.
Stop. Before I don't vote at all. Like, I'm not gonna do that. But damn. One thing I have been doing this week, though, that has been bringing me joy is listening to Mariah Carey's book. So it's been taking me a long time to finish it, but it is very intriguing. I don't think I really knew much about Mariah Carey's personal life until I started to listen to this book. But she is a very interesting person, and everything that I thought about her as being a diva is so true. And yeah, I didn't realize, it's a lot of things. She talks about race a lot, about like being a mixed person. It's a very interesting read. I suggest that anybody who's out there thinking about getting it, I think it's a good read.
I saw her interview with Oprah. It was like an Apple TV exclusive.
Oh yeah, I haven't watched it yet.
Which it did kind of make me curious to like, I kind of want to know what's in the book. But then I read like 10 things you should know from the Mariah Carey memoir.
That's good.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's enough.
That's a good summary. All the things everybody's talking about. Like I got a pretty good gist.
Let's do our queen shit shout out, because although you may be listening to this later in the week, we're recording this on Monday, the day after Lovecraft Country's season finale, not series, season finale. Season 1 just wrapped up. Yes. And we cannot go without giving a shout out to Misha Green, who is the creator and showrunner of Lovecraft Country. Now, everybody's talking about Jordan Peele and whoever else because they're executive producers. Fuck them. This is exactly why we have Queen Tone, because we are uplifting the women who are actually behind the success of these shows. And Misha just has showed her ass all season.
Yes. And to add to, so Misha Green is also I don't know if she's the creator of Underground as well, but she's the director of it too. So
Oh,
even
I didn't
knowing
realize that.
even knowing that, it connects because I feel like I have the same feelings between like watching Underground and then also watching Lovecraft Country. And if you all are unfamiliar with Lovecraft Country, shame on you, but it's an amazing show that just wrapped up on HBO. It has, and I don't even want to attempt to try and describe what the show
Wait.
is.
Did you see SNL this weekend with Issa Rae, and she trying to explain what the fuck Lovecraft Country is about? And it's literally, you can't explain it. Just watch.
It got a little bit of everything in there. But yeah, it's a great show. So definitely shout out to Misha Green. And also for folks who watch it, a plug for the podcast to Lovecraft Radio, which definitely helps me process every week after every episode. But definitely Misha Green is on her queen shit. But specifically, I kind of even want to double click into Lovecraft of Diana D. Freeman, who is a character in Lovecraft. I just feel like she really did what needed to be done. This is a spoiler alert too for the finale. But her getting her arm from her mother, who is now all knowing and all powerful, and actually doing what needs to be done as far as killing Christina.
Yes.
Because I feel like we always see it in things where it's like leaving a little bit of glimpse of hope by like, oh, they're kind of alive, but she just doesn't have a power, but she still can live.
That bitch dead.
Yeah. And Dee was like, no, y'all not gonna change. Like, and I feel like seeing that part of the show and seeing like the story arc of Dee, of starting off as this innocent 13-year-old girl to quickly having her father killed, having her best friend, who was Emmett Till, murdered with no justice, and we know he never really got justice.
Right.
And then having her mother leave her, and then the cop coming and putting a curse on her, that then
with the
having her haunted by Topsy and Bobsy, and then the curse kills her arm, and she's an artist, so then that basically takes away her talent. And like, I think of on Twitter a few times, it was the question of like, at what moment in your life were you radicalized? And I feel like it was all these small moments that like really opened Dee's eyes up and forced her to grow up.
Absolutely.
And what's interesting too is a lot of folks on Twitter who were responding when they said like what moment in life, for the Black people responding, they all had an incident when they were a child, and something happened to them that made them like open their eyes and see the world for what it really was. Compared to the non-Black folks, they were much older, usually in college, and it was something happening to someone else. Yeah. So even it's like to see for us how shit like that happens at a young age. But definitely shout out to Dee. I love that story arc. It's just in the bionic arm, it gave me Misty Knight vibes. So it was I'm definitely here for that. Yes. So that's, if you haven't watched Lovecraft Country, watch it. If you haven't watched Underground, watch it. It's not the typical.
All right, so let's get into this week's topic. We're talking millennial marriage and what millennial marriage, or what marriage even is. So, we were kind of inspired by some of the things that have been going on in pop culture this week and last week. And so we just decided, hey, why not tackle this topic? So, I'm currently in a relationship. I've been in a relationship. In this iteration of my relationship, we've been together about 3 years. Before that, we were together since we were 16. But we took a 5-year break, guys. So it's not as dramatic as it sounds. What about you, Dana? What's your relationship status?
I currently belong to the streets right now.
As do many others.
No, I'm not in any type of serious relationship right now. So I'm living life, doing what I do, being young, wild, and free.
Absolutely. It's always a hot girl summer. It's internal.
Even in a pandemic.
Even in a pandemic. Well, yeah, I was saying, not according to the CDC. Right.
It should be a cold girl winter.
Right. So,
as far as like your ideal of marriage or getting married, like growing up versus now, like did you grow up wanting to get married? And if so, like what made you want to get married? And now that we're in our 30s, has your opinion changed about marriage as we've gotten older?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think growing up, marriage was, I saw it in the future, but it was very far off into the future. So no actual like plans. I wasn't 15 thinking about marriage, or hell, even like 24 thinking about marriage. But I saw it a lot growing up, because my parents have been married for like 34 years, something like that. And a lot of the relationships in my family, most of them, not all, but most of them, have also been married for the majority of my life. So I saw marriage, but it was just like, oh, this is a thing that you do when you're an adult, versus like, I never really fell into the Disney princess. Oh, I'm gonna grow up and find a Prince Charming. I also was very much so a tomboy, so even that whole idea of like little girls growing up to find their prince never really fit me. Um, but I think now, and definitely like in the last few years, I've definitely thought about marriage. I want to get married, but I feel like I want to get married definitely for different reasons than what's popular or common. It's definitely, to me, I see it as like joining in a business. Yes, there's love and romance and all of that, but I don't think that's the only factor that should go into getting married. It's
I mean,
definitely,
it is a legal document.
yeah, like there should be more thought and more, requirements going in than just really loving a person. Because you could really love a person, but they could be a horrible business partner. They could be a horrible parent. They could be other things that I think will
Right.
go into, um, doing life with.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's something I want. It's not as high on my list of things to do, even as I approach 30, or
Mm-hmm.
shit, I am 30 now, so even into my 30s.
I was about to say, are we in
Yeah.
2019 again,
Oh shit,
or?
I wish.
I mean, I didn't know if you wanted to tell the masses, but
Yeah, yeah. What about you? Is marriage on the horizon for you, or did you grow up kind of planning your wedding and things like that? I planned my
well,
reception and the music. I will say that. I've never actually planned the wedding or the groom, but I know all the
yeah,
musical points are written.
of course, you already have a playlist. For me, it's funny because I think I'm kind of the opposite of you because I did not grow up seeing a lot of marriages or really any marriages that were successful. Like my parents, they got divorced when I was young. And as far as my like aunts and uncles, none of them were really like they. Some of them were in marriages, but not like happy ones. So I don't like remember growing up like seeing a happy, functional marriage at all. And then when you think about the the stories that I heard about my grandfather and my grandmother on my mother's side, like would never. When you say Papa was a Rolling Stone, okay, like
Wherever
yeah,
he laid his hat.
yes, my aunt and uncle are a few months apart. Let's just say that. So no, literally. So, I never grew up seeing like functional marriages, but I always like I grew up being a hopeless romantic. So like literally as a little girl, I would fantasize about my wedding, not necessarily about being married, because I didn't understand the concept of marriage, right? Especially growing up not seeing it. But I knew I wanted this fabulous wedding dress. I wanted purple elephants and doves that were painted gold and purple. I don't know, it was gonna be some type of cute ass wedding. I knew what type of food I wanted. I want lamb chops. I want surf and turf. Like I knew all of those things, but necessarily did not have a groom in mind, or even thought about like who I was going to marry, or even thought that I would want to get married. And then as I've gotten older, um, I think I see marriage more as that contractual obligation that is not necessarily needed in order to do a lot of the things that people want to do. Because I mean, it's especially now versus my when my grandmother was alive, you don't need a man to make money. You don't have to. You can have a baby out of wedlock and you're not going to die or burn in hell. There's like all these things. It's like, I don't actually need to be married to somebody. And actually, I don't think I've ever desired any of the partners that I've ever had. I've never desired to marry them except for the partner that I have now. And I will say, I mean, we met pretty young. And when I was younger, I was like, I'm going to marry him. But like, you know, like again, half-heartedly because I didn't understand what marriage is. But as an adult, I'm like, oh, I could marry him and be okay with it, and that would be the person that I would marry. So yeah, so that's kind of like how my idea of marriage has definitely evolved over time, and I think for a lot of us, as we've reached our 30s, for those of us who are not married yet, seeing our peers get married because Dana and I were going to weddings back to back. What was that? Summer 2016.
Back to back to back to back. Yes.
Yeah, like early to mid 20s, everybody was getting married, and I was just like, oh, not for me.
Yeah. Thanks for the invite. Love your love.
Yeah. And as time goes on, I'm seeing more and more proposals and things, and so it's definitely been more on my mind, but not necessarily something that I aspire to. But I will say, because of my current partner, I'm like, oh, I could marry you. Like, what's the hold up? You know?
So is then your interest in marriage more clear or more desirable because you have like a man in that position that could fulfill it, compared to like, I'm not dating anyone or in a long-term relationship, so that it's just an idea right now. It's not put into or actually being able to plan with an actual person.
Well, that's a good question because I've had long relationships where we've talked about marriage, and honestly, even though I may have said like, oh yeah, one day we could get married, I never actually felt the feeling that I feel now where it's like, oh, I could actually marry this person and be okay with it. Where in those other, and I'm telling you, like 2-year relationships, year relationships, you kind of going down that path, and you have these talks, and it's like, oh yeah, like, I want to get married, you want to get married, but do we want to marry each other? Is the key distinction in those relationships. So it's like those relationships don't compare to this one, because I actually see myself like, oh yes, I'm going to go to the courthouse, sign that piece of paper, and I'm going to marry you, and we can do that tomorrow if you ask me right now, that type of thing. Where those other relationships, I was just kind of like, hell no. Like, if it was to come down to it and they proposed to me, I probably would have said no.
Yeah. I think too, my unofficial litmus test with guys that I've dated has always been, like I said, my parents have been married for a long time, and one of the things that I saw kind of seeing their marriage and living, in their marriage, was even decades later, for the most part, they still like each other. Like, not 100% of the time, because no one likes each other 100% of the time, but like, they still get excited to go to Home Depot or Sam's Club on Saturdays with each other. And when I think of niggas that I've dated, it's like,
that's real.
I cannot imagine 20 years from now, I'm excited to be in bedding at Sam's Club, or, like buying bulk chicken fingers or whatever in Sam's Club and being excited about it. Like, you probably would have got on my nerves like year 2.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think that also plays a part in like, and we've talked even separately outside of this of like, we get glamorized with the wedding and the proposal and everything like that, but the actual marriage, we usually don't even see examples of an actual marriage past the honeymoon phase. TV movies, even the favorite celebs, you don't even really get to see into that. Which I think
you don't see it unfiltered, because relationships take work, and anybody who tells you, anybody in a relationship knows relationships takes work. Not everything is rosy. This. People should know this. And so, yeah,
you don't know.
Now you know. And so, when people say relationship goals, or, they're comparing themselves, or they're posting pictures of people, it's like, give it time, because you'll either find out that he cheated. Shit, even Beyonce got cheated on.
Right.
Love her. But even Beyonce got cheated on. So, it's like, marriage, especially for women, is not always the most lucrative thing. So it really is, damn, I really have to love this nigga in order to sign that piece of paper. So we did ask our followers, both on Twitter and social media, to sound off on this topic. We specifically asked some questions surrounding, why do you even want to get married? And so we asked our non-married friends on our social media why they want to get married. And so some of the comments that we got back is, here's the first one. I want to share my life, happiness, and accomplishments with someone. Okay. This next one is, companionship and benefits. I'm assuming the benefits, maybe insurance.
That was
a lot of, I was like, benefits, money, life insurance policy.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Another person said kids and a life partner. Okay, so they feel like they need to get married in order to have kids, or to have a life partner. Partnership and love is one that we got on Twitter, and then stability is another one that we got on Twitter.
Yeah. Then we for the married folk, the ones who put a ring on it, they said we were in love and had created a family together. Making it official made it complete. Another response: I loved who I was with and wanted to build a life and family together. Growing in life with a partner. On Twitter, someone said partnership and love. And then one was I was dating with the intention of being married. I wasn't looking for someone just to be in a relationship with. And I will say, too, that one came from a man. So even saying, like, first date, sitting down, this is my intention.
Yes.
Which
happened to one of our friends, apparently.
Yeah. But it's... I thought it was rare until we actually started like probing and talking about this.
I know people are like sitting down on first dates, like, so I want to be a wife / husband and mother / father. Yeah. If this is not your plan, then we need not go on a second date.
I love the transparency. You know what you want. You say what you want, and you go for it. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, well, some people, and we'll get into this later, but some people take that intention or that intensity of knowing what you want as pressure.
Yeah. People, words mean things too.
Words do mean
words
things.
Definitely mean things. But yeah, it seems kind of along the same lines of wanting to get married for either kids, and whether or not like it's the kids become before the marriage or after the marriage, but I'm assuming too also having like a partner to raise said child. Or kids together.
Don't nobody want to raise no snot-nosed little kid by themselves.
Yeah. You can do it. It's capable.
You can do it. I was raised by a single mother,
but
she had 3 kids. I don't understand how she did it.
Yeah. Or love, sharing in life and happiness, and it kind of being the next step in life. I for the one who said stability too. I think that's still probably something that kind of has carried on through generations. You know, even kind of we hinted upon, back in the day with like our grandparents in the 50s, 40s, 60s, things like that. It was women needed to get married in order to have stability, in order to be taken care of, because they, went from their father taking care of them and then finding a husband to be able to take care of them, and have children. But even now, I feel like stability is important. It just may look different. So I'm not solely marrying you for, financial gain. It may just be stability of splitting responsibility, even if those responsibilities aren't monetary necessarily.
Yeah, taking care of the household. And I think that also may come from, how people grow up. I mean, clearly I don't know how this particular person grew up who said stability, but I could see how growing up, if you grew up in a single parent household, or you grew up like I did, like I grew up poor. we were rich in family and love. And poor in the material things in life. And I could see how you could be like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. So I'm gonna need either, somebody who's my equal and can contribute exactly what I could, or contribute more. Because I know a lot of us are out here trying to be housewives. I'm trying to be kept, not a housewife, but I'm trying to be kept. Distinct difference. So yeah, so I get stability. And with kids, I don't know, you don't need to necessarily be married in order to have kids. Like, I'm just not of that thought. And I don't think that just because you're not married and you have a child doesn't mean you have to be a single parent, right? Like, one of my friends' parents have been in a relationship for almost 30 years and they've never signed a marriage certificate, but they operate as a married couple, and you would never know the difference. In fact, when they told me, I was like, oh, your parents aren't married? Who knew? So it's possible in order to have a whole life with somebody, have multiple kids, have a house, have cars, and never legally be married to them. And so everybody has their own reasons for wanting to be married or not. And we actually have some statistics here about just like millennial marriage and some of the things that we found interesting.
Yeah, so I'm a woman who loves data and numbers, so I was excited to get some data on this. But a few interesting facts on millennials getting married is that millennials are actually driving a decline, a 24% decline in U.S. divorce rates. So people aren't getting as divorced as often, but that's because millennials are often waiting later in life to get married or even get married at all. Right in 2019, only 44% of millennials were married, and compared to the higher percentages of the generations before them, so Gen X, Boomers, and things
Makes
like that.
sense to me. When you got student loan debt and living at home, it's really hard to get married.
Right, right. And then the median age at first marriage has edged up. In 2019, the average man first got married at 30, and the average woman at 28. And this is 3 years later for both men and women than what it was in 2003, and 4 years later than what it was in 1987, and then even 7 years later than in 1968. So you can see, like, now 30, 28 now is like the norm age to get married, but back in the day it was like 20, and I can't even imagine. Granted, our lives are different at those phases in life now, but I just could not imagine being married at
21, 22.
Yeah. And here's what's interesting too is specifically for Black millennials are far less likely to be married than millennials in other racial and ethnic groups. 24% compared with 51% of Asians, 48% of white, and 42% of Hispanic millennials. But this racial gap is also similar for older generations. So specifically, when we talk about our people, it's even less for millennials to get married compared to.
Yes, that racial or ethnic group. I wonder why that is. I wonder if there's some theories behind those statistics, but very interesting.
Yeah. And then kind of getting into I'll read these statistics, but then I want to ask you specifically as far as the why or kind of the benefit of marriage. But traditionally marriage was, like we said before, women find men so that they can have stability and have income, have someone taking care of them, have children and things like that. But that was when women didn't work or didn't have, even if they did work, it wasn't careers or jobs that was lucrative enough to be self-sustaining for a woman to live a life on her own or, like you said, be a single mom. But in 2020, that is not the case.
Not at all.
And
I do just want to add, though, that we are sitting here as two college-educated women. We both have master's degrees. We both live in major cities. We both make a good amount of money. Not tell our business. But, right. Bless up. Right. So it's like, I do want to acknowledge that we have privilege, where where other women don't, right? And so we're talking from our perspective of being able to say, like, oh, I actually don't need a partner, man or woman, in order to supplement my income or to help me with the bills or to take care of a child if I had one. If I had a child right now, I could absolutely financially take care of my child by myself. Yeah. And so that's just the perspective we're coming from. So because I don't want Twitter coming for our necks. For leaving
and
out.
let me be clear, if someone comes along who's willing to take care and do everything,
look, I said
I'd like to see that. Like,
I'm fine with being kept, okay? I'll run a foundation. I'll have a cute little fundraisers.
Right. I will be making star-shaped pancakes for the kids.
No, I'll still have a nanny for that. Let's be real. I said kept, not housewife. Kept.
Lord. But to get into some facts on kind of the benefit of marriage for women. So it turns out from a study done by Psychology Today, marriage actually benefits men more than it does women. Research has shown that the marriage benefits, which can be classified as health, wealth, and happiness, go disproportionately to men. Married men are better off than single men. On the other hand, married women are not better off than unmarried women. Mm-hmm. And then when we look at those folks in marriages, so for heterosexual marriages, 2/3 of divorces are initiated by women. And what I found interesting about this was it's not only true for young women. A AARP survey of about 1,000 men and women who are between the ages of 40 and 79 who were divorced found that 66% of those women said that they initiated the split. So then it's a question of, men tend to
pack your shit.
Right.
Pack your shit.
Men tend to benefit from marriage, and then when women are in these marriages at all ages, it's the women who are initiating the divorces and saying that they're not happy. And then to add on to that, a recent paper by a Stanford sociologist surveyed a sample size of about 2,000 heterosexual adults in relationships, and found that roughly 2/3 of those breakups in heterosexual marriages were that the women were unhappy. So in the marriages, the women were unhappy. But when it came to relationships, so non-marital relationships, the women were more happy, or reported to be satisfied. So it's a difference between just saying women in relationships or marriage, or specifically marriage. And this finding appears to provide support for the notion that women experience the institution of marriage as oppressive, in large part because it emerged from and still carries the imprint of a system of female subjugation.
And nothing about that surprises me.
Yeah, that
literally nothing.
It just provided proof to what I already felt like.
I already knew this.
When I think
I have arguments about this every 6 months.
And it can even be seen in things of like, and we've had conversations about like women changing their last names, and the roots of that is very possessive and traditionalist and oppressive, as opposed to now most people's like, oh, it's tradition.
Yes.
And I don't see anything wrong with it. But also, as young girls or as women, it's always been the notion of, oh, when I get married, my name is going to change. So of course it's more palatable because it's been fed to you since.
It's funny. I don't think I'm trying to think if I've ever dreamt about changing my last name. Maybe hyphen it. But I have a very unique last name. I'm Nigerian. My partner has, he has a last name that is not, it's what some would deem as a common last name. But even outside of that, I mean, as the statistics show and what we already know, marriage, a lot of marriage, especially the history of marriage in modern day, is based in patriarchy. And so the whole proposal and changing of the last names, and the women, even statistically doing more housework and taking care of the kids and not being promoted because you're married and have children versus your male counterparts who are married with children but still get promoted despite having that, because their wives take on all of the responsibility. And even today I see it literally at work, where my male colleagues are on the calls at 6:30 at night, just like I am. But my female colleagues with children, they're like, I have to go.
Yeah.
I have to, I have a baby screaming, or I have to go pick up the kids from school, or they're literally on the bus, like this happened on the bus, and saying sorry about the background noise. I had to pick up, my child from school.
Do you know how many, even just in the time of COVID, how many of my, because like I said before, I don't have kids, but my coworkers, how many times the women apologize for like their kids being in the screen or asking for something, and I'm like, please stop apologizing for your kid wanting a fruit snack. Like it's fine. We're
all at home.
Yeah, we're all at home in a pandemic. Shout out to people at home all day with kids, because I could not imagine. That's a special kind of hell,
I'm not gonna lie.
trying to teach this new math.
The new math.
How
many apples does Johnny have?
Johnny has 5 damn apples.
No, seriously. And the thing about marriage for me, and this is why I've never envisioned myself getting married. And it's funny because even when I got back together with my current partner after being separated for 5 years, the first conversation we had, before we thought we were ever going to get back together, right? This is just a friendly lunch with an ex. I had even mentioned, like, Yeah, I just got out of I mean I was still dating somebody at that point, right? I literally in a relationship at this lunch with my ex, and I said, I don't think I will ever get married. I literally said this to him. I said, I don't think I will ever get married. I just don't think it's in the cards for me. Like, I just don't think it's for me. And I really felt that way. Like, I was 100% at the end of my rope in that relationship, and was like, this shit is not for me. Like, I just don't ever think I was like, I'm very independent. I'm very much like, if you can't give me what I got already, I don't need you. So I just kept dating men who, after a time period, you get together, it's all honeymoon phase, everything's great, everybody has potential, blah blah blah. And then over time, in a relationship, you understand, could I marry this person? And I just kept saying, no, I don't think I could ever marry this person. And so it's so funny that first conversation we had after 5 years of not talking, I was like, yeah, I don't think I'll ever get married. It's just not for me. And here I am looking stupid, Bozo the Clown. After going home to break up with my current boyfriend that exact same night, and then getting back together with my current partner 3 years later, here we are, and I'm like, okay, so when are you proposing to me? Is that happening now or in 6 months? Is it this calendar year or next calendar year? And so yeah, it's very interesting. And one other thing, I know we were just talking about like marriage being a patriarchy. So again, I want to acknowledge that me and Data think a certain way, right? We're very similar. I understand that there are women out there who don't think that changing your last name is oppressive or some of those things that come with marriage in this patriarchal society that we live in is oppressive to them. And the thing about it is, with patriarchy, or even I'll say the inverse, or like with feminism, is that you have the choice, right? Yes. So if you choose and you're like, I really want to take my husband's last name because that is something that I want to do, not something that your husband forced on you, 100% believe it's your choice. Love it. Will call you whatever you want. But in these situations where I see a lot of men, because this comes up a lot in conversations that I'm in, because I'm absolutely positively not changing my last name. It's just, I don't care who I could literally be marrying anybody and I would not change my last name.
I think my opinion on the last name thing is, I'm open to hyphenating. But, and I've never wanted to change my name, one, because I just like how my name sounds. I think too, I've also had this name for 30 years. Like, the older I get without being married, the more time that I've been this person. So it's not like, oh, when I was young, like anytime I'll run into people I'll be out with my mom and they refer to her by her maiden name. And it's like, oh, you knew her when she was basically a child because she, she got married when she was younger or things like that, versus at this point, half of my life, or a little bit less than half of my life, will have been at this with my current last name. And with family history too, like, my last name is not a white man's last name. Like a lot of people, historically with us Black Americans, my grandfather, whose father was a white man, he actually changed his name to a Black man's name, his mother's stepfather. So it's like family history of my name was chosen as opposed to it was given to us by default with no actual cultural reference. So it's also like a pride of this name was chosen. To the point of it being patriarchy. Yes, it's also my dad's name, but I also love my dad and I'm cool with him. So it's like, okay, like,
sounds fine.
Right. And my last name is short, so it's easy to hyphenate, but like,
easy to say.
So I may not be 100%. I'm not gonna change my name, but I'm like 98%.
Well, for me, it's like, I don't plan on changing my name, but also to my current partner and to partners that I've had in the past, I've said, I'm willing to hyphenate if we both hyphenate. Like, if we're both insert name, and it matches, or we as a unit decide to pick a third last name. To me, those are the only two options that are truly compromises, because me taking your last name and you not changing anything, to me, is not a compromise, right? Because I'm still giving something and you're not giving anything. Plus, I'm also going to lose, my economic power at work. My body's going to be fucked up because I'm bearing your children, which is something that you can't do, right? And statistically, I'm going to be unhappy because no matter how well you treat me, that's just how marriages are, right? And some of these things are just out of our control because that's just how society functions. And so some things is like you can control it because it's you and your partner, but some of those things, like how I'm treated at work once I have a child, is nothing I can do about that, right? Because that's society putting different pressures or different expectations on me once I become a mother. And so, a lot of men are not open to hyphenating and having a matching last name or picking a third last name, which means that, okay, well, then I'm not changing my last name and you're not changing yours. And that's just what it is.
I think,
so, yeah.
To your point of when you said not having the choice, I think that's very important. And I hate the idea of not being able to have choice and make decisions. So even, again, not bashing women who change their last name, but like it's a choice. So if you want to do it and you're eager to do it, go forth and do it. It's only when it's the idea of I have to do this and somehow I'm having to give up something in the context of it benefiting or for me to be able to have or to quote unquote keep this man or do whatever.
Or some people will be like, I earned this last name, and I'm like, girl, what? No, he earned you. Like the bar is on the floor for these men. Like you didn't earn his last name, girl. He earned the right to marry you, and it's okay. Like if you just want his last name, just say that.
He didn't earn his last name. It was a of who he was born to. Like it's really unless I somehow marry someone who is known by their last name or somebody ridiculously like I'm not a fan of the Kardashians, but I could understand someone marrying a Kardashian and be like, maybe I don't want this name.
That could be a stage name. I don't know if I would change my legal name. I don't know. Black China tried.
Yeah.
But she didn't make it to the. She was trying to. I think her real name's Angela, and she was trying to get Angela Kardashian trademarked or something, but she hadn't actually sealed the deal. Girl, you got to seal the deal first. You got to drive to Vegas, get Rob Aston. She really fumbled the bag, but at least she had a baby. Yeah. So, we're about to get trash in the comments. I could already hear the angry men just typing fast.
And I've had this conversation. I was having a conversation with my brother of I wish more men really understood the root of patriarchy to understand that men screwed themselves over by coming up with this whole idea of you complain about gold diggers, but you created the idea that men are meant to not the men living
to
now,
provide.
But they play into it. Yeah, so it's not really. And then you can't.
A woman literally could not have property not too long ago. Women just got the right to vote. Let's come on. And that's white women. Yeah. We're not even talking about black, women of color, black women who identify as Latino. So we're not even talking about the different variations of women. We're talking cis and trans and all these different types of women, and our rights are already in this hierarchical position against just men existing and doing nothing.
Yeah. So blame your mans. For it. And granted, women do also feed into patriarchy too, but
women perpetuate it. Yeah, absolutely. There are some women who perpetuate it, and I just want y'all to be free. Yeah, that's all. I just want y'all to be free. Okay, so now I want to kind of get into. So we kind of talked about, thinking about marriage growing up, how our expectations have changed. You're single, I'm not. But one thing that has definitely come up over the last few days is this clip by the Ellises. And I just kind of want to get into that. So Dana, can you explain the clip and who the Ellises are?
Yeah, so the Ellises is Deval and Kadeen. Deval is an actor, comedian, social media comedian, ex-NFL player. He's been married to his wife since they were 17 or something. They have a blog.
Not married, but together,
yeah,
right?
together. They've been married. Yeah,
Okay.
they've been married for a long mid 30s, and they have 3 kids together. And they kind of chronicle their lives as millennial marrieds, and then also like as parents raising 3 whole boys. And I'm obsessed with just like their family and watching their little vlogs and listening to their podcasts. Um, and so on their most recent episode that talked about monogamy, there was a clip that's online, and the clip went viral.
What you asked me, you said to me you never pressured me to get married. In 2007, we were living together, right? You said you no longer wanted to live with me and shack up with me because you wanted to be my wife, not my girlfriend.
Right, because I wanted to know where the
That don't
relationship
sound like
was going.
pressure to you?
It sounds like me voicing where I see my life going. It sounds like me saying this is what I would like. You can decide to meet me there. If not, we can reevaluate what exactly we're doing.
Okay. Additionally,
Would I call it pressure per se? Not necessarily pressure.
It is pressure. But you don't want to say it's pressure. What about being engaged?
You might have felt pressure.
What about
There was
being
no
engaged?
pressure behind it.
I said, we don't got to rush to get married. You said, I don't want to be engaged longer than a year. Is that not pressure?
That's me voicing my opinion about it.
Sounds like pressure to me. So you say you want to be engaged, I get engaged. You say you want to be married within a year. We do that. We get married, then you make it seem like sex is a chore to your husband. Once again, I ask the question, why do women who push forth monogamy on the man they're dating then get overwhelmed when that man who tries to provide that monogamy to you? Why do you get upset when we're trying to be what you want us to be? You don't want me to be with no one else, right? Right? I'm asking. This is a serious
Right,
question.
yes, absolutely.
You don't want me to be with no one else.
If anything, she expressed what she wanted, and he wanted her, so therefore he acted accordingly. To me, that sounds like communication.
That sounds like, yeah. I mean, even in the clip, I mean, she sounded surprised, and to me, and of course, I think that they have a great. I mean, it looks like they have a great relationship. You can literally never tell. And if you listen to the context of the whole episode, clearly, I don't think it was a complete surprise. Like, they probably talked about this controversial opinion beforehand or whatever. And the context of the whole episode is not as bad as the clip. I will say that.
I actually agree with him in the context of the whole clip. And so just.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with that part, but the larger conversation that they had,
the larger conversation was around him saying traditionally it tends to be women who want to enter the relationship first or ask, what are we doing? What is this? Whatever, with the assumption that I want to be in a relationship and I want it to be a monogamous relationship. So therefore, we're only having sex with each other. And then DeVal's point was, if women initiate having a monogamous relationship, and then when men say they aren't getting enough sex, where does that leave the man if I'm only supposed to have sex with you and you don't want to have sex and you act like it's not a big deal? Like, what are they supposed to do? And they go in to say how this has always been a topic that they discuss a lot, because Khadeen didn't know going into marriage and prior to having kids that her libido was going to change and all of this. So they had to figure it out together and have an understanding of like, what does him having a higher sex drive mean and things like that. So that's where it came into like, she pressured him into getting married, and that's where she's like, right, no, I didn't, whatever.
So we're isolating the part about forcing or pressuring because there's a lot to talk about in the episode, but we're just gonna focus in on this particular topic. And so when I heard that, it was funny because I've been having somewhat of the same conversations with my partner, not in a way where I'm like, oh, you need to marry me by tomorrow or I'm leaving, but more so like I think I'm ready to get married. I think we should get married within this time frame. You know, this is what I think. What do you think? And so at first I think I was afraid to have that conversation or be honest about that because, one, I'm an Aquarius and I hate sharing my feelings. And then two, because I know how men think. And this clip fed into, I mean, we had this conversation before this clip surfaced, but it's funny because I texted my partner and I was like, see, this is why I didn't want to have that conversation, because I thought you were going to respond like this. He did not respond like that, right? He was like, oh, it's good that you express that. This is my timeline. So how do those timelines match up? Just to be on the same page, right? Because if I say 6 months and he says a year, that doesn't mean we have to break up. Now, if I said 6 months and he said 8 years, then okay, then we have a problem. Like we need to reconcile this. But it's like, oh, okay, we can have that conversation and say, all right, good. We're definitely in the same chapter. We're working on getting on the same page. Like we both see ourselves getting married. It's just our timelines are a little bit off, but not so off that we have to reconsider the foundation of our relationship, right? But I was afraid to say that because as someone who I consider myself to be a very logical person, I was like, if I say this to him, he is going to take this as some type of ultimatum or pressure. And was I wrong? Boy, was I wrong that he did not interpret it like that. But for some men, they would interpret that kind of open communication as an ultimatum or as pressure, when it's really just like saying or not pushing back. But I feel like the husband in that situation should have said, well, honey, this is what I think.
Yeah, this is what I see. This is
what I see.
Are you not? I think too, for me and you as well, of like, we're both planners, not of both of cities, but like just planning lives, planning
life out,
in general. So I just like to plan just to know, even if the plans change. So I think too, it's just and it's funny because a lot of what Kadeen and Devout talk about in their podcast is like starting these conversations that we didn't know we should have had before we got married, because no one told us a lot, and they even
when you get married young, they got married young.
They even talk about their parents are married, but they never talked about stuff like that with them, of like, going into this, you can expect that, or I think and even having an agreement and communicating, to your point, on expectations of things, because I think men think, and just not all men, but in general, may think that marriage is like a life sentence or something, or doesn't see it as joy because it's restrictive. And it's like, if that's what you go into it thinking, then you're going to behave that way. Or even if you you come from a certain upbringing and you're with someone who comes from a different upbringing, whether it be 2-parent households, a different type of, you're doing things based off of religious values and traditions, whatever, you have certain expectations, and if you don't voice those or share those with the person that you plan to spend your life with, you're going to be surprised when they expect of you as that role or as that partner something completely different than what you signed up for. And if you would have had a conversation about it, or at least said, and maybe you have no expectations, and maybe that's I have no expectations, so I can't guide you into what I think you as my partner should be, but I think more people should communicate, and not just in romantic relationships. I mean, like, hell, we watched the whole season of Insecure, and their main thing was bitches talk to each other.
Yeah. And I think it does have a lot to do. I mean, I think your circumstances also matter, because I believe they said they were living together at the time that they had this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, he was in the NFL, and she had moved to Detroit to live with him
to be with him and stuff like that. So I think that also plays a part, right? Because I think I've lived with a partner before. I do not suggest doing this. For me, living with my boyfriend was just, ghetto, very ghetto. And in this relationship, my partner is even more adamant about not living together before we're married, right? And so it's a different, so like our communication is on a different level, because I have to force, like when we're together, like when we're not in our separate homes, like, or we have to have those conversations, where I feel like when I lived with my partner, some of those things were taken for granted. You're just kind of going day by day. You're kind of, you play house. That's literally what you're doing. You come home, you come from work, you cook dinner, you kind of get into this routine where I feel like now, and the foundation of our relationship was long distance. We have been long distance our entire relationship since 16. up until I moved to Chicago almost 2 years ago, not quite 2 years, right? We have been long distance that entire time. So communication for us has never been perfect, but has always been something we consistently had to work on because there was no other way. Like those 2 or 3 day visits, those long phone calls like that, we never could take that for granted. Where if you're living with somebody or you have access to somebody a little bit more often, sometimes you take those conversations for granted and you don't communicate as much as you should. No, because the free spirit in me I'm not about to beg a nigga for nothing. I mean, and I literally say that to my partner all the time. I'm not about to beg you for nothing. If I'm going to tell you how I feel, I'm going to ask you how you feel, and then if those things don't match, or I don't feel like I'm like, that I'm going to be happy, then I'm just going to walk away. Like, I'm not going to beg you to marry me. Like like that's just, and I know it may not be that for some people, but to me that's how it sounds, right? I'm not about to beg you to marry me. Now, am I going to talk about, well, are we going towards marriage? And what's your timeline versus what my timeline is? But I'm not going to say marry me by December 31st, 2020. Not in any seriousness at all, because I just feel like that is forcing someone to do something because they're afraid of you losing you. Now, is that your fault? Like, nobody should be afraid of losing you to the point where they can't communicate to you what they actually need, right? But I'm also not going to impose those things on my partner. Like, I don't think I could date somebody who would take an ultimatum seriously, because I want a free thinker as well. Yeah. Now, if you're on drugs, I'm like, you absolutely need to stop doing drugs.
Extreme circumstances.
But even that, I'm like, I'm not about to beg you to stop doing drugs. Yeah. Like, I'm gonna tell you how I feel. And I'm talking crack, I'm talking like, I'm talking crackhead, I'm talking heroin, I'm talking meth, I'm talking you ain't got no teeth. Like, I'm going to tell you, but I'm also just going to be like, okay, like, I'm going to walk away. I'm not going to beg you to do anything. No.
Yeah, I'm definitely, and this is when I get caught up in, maybe it's the Capricorn in me, maybe it's the wording, but I don't need anyone, but I want you, to the point of the choice thing. Like, you are a choice and I am a choice. So at any point in time, you can choose to do whatever. Part of marriage is choosing that one person for better, for worse, for richer, for like whatever, right, they say in the vows or whatever you choose your vows to be, but it's your choice. And every day you wake up and you choose that person, or you choose to choose that person. Yeah. And to me, that's what it should always be. You always have the option. And hopefully like, we're agreeing that the option is me and, my option is them. So I'm not doing, it'll be a rainy day in hell before
I mop the ocean first. But, not for everybody. Not for everybody. I understand.
Or maybe it's just, it could also be different verbiage. Because even in the comments of the DeVal and Kadeen clip, you could tell a lot of people were saying the same thing, but the actual saying words that they were using, it was with different language, or kind of what different things stuck out to them. But
I just can't see myself begging to be oppressed. I just can't see that. But I mean, also, I will say, and my therapist told me this one time, because my partner comes from a 2-parent household and I come from the exact opposite, that I have shown resentment towards people who grow up in 2-parent households and happy marriages, and I have never seen that for myself, right? And that comes from the trauma that I experienced growing up in the household that I did. So, like, having that love for marriage for some people feels completely different, or it comes from a different place, and I know that I'm cynical, right? And so it's just like, no, I'm not begging to be oppressed by marriage, like, no. But over time, I've seen, and it takes this. Clearly, this one person has come along and changed my entire feelings about it. Because 3 years ago, I was like, I'm about to be Tracy Ellis Ross in this bitch. Like, I'm not about to have no kids. I'm gonna be single. I'm gonna be doing fucking Pilates on Instagram. I'm not gonna give a fuck. And, sometimes that one person comes along and you're like, damn, everything I thought, or everything I knew to be true for myself has changed. Yeah. And so I do think my perspective on, because I do want to marry him, right? I do want to spend the rest of my life with him. I do want that paperwork. I do want a wedding, I do want those things. And it's okay to actively admit that. And it's taken me a lot of time in therapy in order to get to this point where I can actually verbalize that without feeling like I am being a traitor to my own logic,
Yeah, I think too, there's a difference, speaking from a woman's point of view, there's a difference between wanting to be married and wanting to be married to a specific person. And I think my desire is greatly tied to me seeing that person and wanting that for us. Like, and I've talked about this of my desire for kids and whatever route I need to take to get there is so much stronger than my desire to be married. It's like, oh, if marriage don't happen, it's whatever. But I'm like, nope, if I can't physically have kids, it'll be adoption, like whatever it needs. Like, my desire for that is stronger compared to marriage at this point.
And it's separate.
Yeah. Who's to say, to your point, if someone were to come along that could completely change, and it's like, wow, I was talking a whole bunch of shit, but everything I said,
everything I said just jumped out the window.
Right.
Yeah. And that kind of goes to this tweet that I made the other day, because I was, again, having this internal fight with myself. After I had this conversation, or around the time I was going to have this conversation with my partner about like the timeline for being married. And I was just really asking myself, do I actually want to be married because I want to be married? Or is it because I'm seeing people be engaged and I'm seeing people getting married and I'm seeing weddings on my timeline? And I think there's this underlying desire for women, and I'm speaking generally, but I'm worthy of marriage too. I'm worthy of being engaged too. I'm worthy of a man feeling like they should scoop me up. And so the underlying, and does that make me a weaker woman, or does that make me a, like some simp or something like that? No, but these societal pressures exist for a reason. And these types of things are very, very real. And so I even have to take the time to check myself and my feelings, to say, like, girl, you tripping because you just saw somebody get engaged. Like, you're good. Like, you don't need to prove to anybody that you're worthy of being married. It's really not that deep.
Even when you think for women, and again, this is general, but like, from childhood with Disney and Finding Your Prince, and even again with all of the sitcoms, the black sitcoms coming back on Netflix, they're in search of a man, or like trying to find a man to be with, regardless of if it's a relationship or marriage. But like, that's what they're, even like very accomplished women of different things, it ain't enough degrees. And I see it all the time, like, it ain't enough degrees of career accomplishments that can really hold weight, it seems, to getting married or having a baby. At least having a baby, at least having.
Go ahead and wrap up this conversation, but please do tweet us and shout us out on Instagram. Tell us what you think. Like, are you ready to get married? If so, why? Why did you get married? Why are you married? Just let us know what you think.
We'll definitely have to have a part 2 of.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have a part 2, and we're gonna bring in some married folks to answer some of the other questions where we kind of fall short because we are not married. Because what the fuck do we know? So we're gonna bring in the experts. We're gonna bring in some guests. So stay tuned for that. And I just want to do a tone check for all of you boneheads who are saying that you're not voting, or saying that you're going to vote for Kanye West. I just really need you to go maybe drink some bleach, because I just don't understand the stupidity of throwing away your vote, right? And so it's not about voting for the lesser of two evils, whatever. We all know that the current person in the red house, in the White, not the red house, Lord,
Shit, it is a red house.
I'm calling it the red house now. That's how racist it is. And the person in the White House right now, we have no future. We have no future if we reelect him. So like Biden and Kamala Harris are really the only options that we have. No, they are not perfect at all. And it does not stop at the ballot box. But if you do not go to the ballot box and cast your vote, then we really will have no options. We will not be able to hold anybody accountable. Parties. Right. Do not.
As a former parliamentarian in protocols and traditions of organizations, like abstaining from voting and voting for a third party when we have a two-party system is a waste. Like people say it's my right and I shouldn't be forced to vote. Like this is the game that we're in.
So we have to play it.
This is the reality of it. Yeah, you have to play the game if you want change, start change, but not 15 and a half days before a make or break election. Like that's not when the time, I appreciate the conversation and discourse about like you can't even with different folks saying of like you can't you have to earn my vote and things like that. I do believe that's true. You can't just say because you black, you Democrat, that's how you're gonna
now all skin folk is kinfolk. I work for the government and I see it every day. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, read the room. Like now is not the time to say I'm gonna write in somebody because they're not. Like
it's just not a viable.
The math not go math is not going to work. And now is not the time. Similar to folks who did it.
16. I mean, this is how we got. I mean, that's how we got here. But also, like white women deciding that they were going to choose their whiteness.
I'm going to vote for this guy because I believe I don't like Hillary in those emails and her pantsuits, and I don't want to.
Lord, would I love to see Hillary in a pantsuit right now. So here's the thing. So this is my tone check for all of you out there, the wokest of the wokest crowd. I love you, but please do us a favor. Go vote in this two-party system and vote for the Biden-Harris ticket. That's all I can say. And we will continue to do this work. Like, I do this work every day in my everyday life. I'm constantly fighting these types of fight more on a local level than it is on a national level, of course. But it's like this does not begin or end with a presidential election. But let me tell you, this presidential election is one of the most. I know we said 2016 is like this fool getting another term where he knows that he has nothing to lose after this. I just really need y'all to check yourself. Don't listen to Ice Cube and P. Diddy. Look, they're both black and rich, and they believe in capitalism, and capitalism is not going to save black people. So they think that they're smart, and P. Diddy tweeted out something about starting his own black party. Just because you have money does not make you a political activist.
And allegedly, he didn't start that. A black woman did a while ago. He came on and then basically
not supporting. Why am I not surprised? Why am I not surprised? If that is true, I am not. If that's true, then I am also just not surprised. But yeah, black capitalism or that is just not. Listening to black rich people is also not a thing that I would suggest, right? Like, take the $80,000 instead of the lunch with Sean Carter. It's okay. Like, and also, and not to be funny, because there are, celebrities or black people who are rich who actually do have something to say, but they also lean on the people who are actually doing this work and the activists who are actually on the ground. Yes. And so even if this rumor is true about P. Diddy co-opting this from another person, that's just a prime example of like how you either started something fresh when there's already people doing this work, or you co-opted something and now it's turned into something that's not as serious because you've decided to put your name on it. And so either of those options just don't make sense. So I'm just making a last ditch effort, a plea. Just check yourself. When you go into that booth, check yourself. And if you mailing in your ballots, I hope you would have already mailed it in by now because they trying to take USPS away from us. If you put it in any later than about 2 weeks ago, it's not gonna make it. And so
yeah, definitely exercise your right to vote. And then also, I feel like there is so much more that I could be educated on, especially at the local level. of like government and how the communities work too. But also people to realize, go out and vote. Yes, it's important. But I think people also feel like, oh, my vote doesn't count, or that's the only civic duty that I have to do is voting. And it's like, voting is one lever of multiple things that you should be doing to be engaged in your community. So it's not, only voting every 4 years.
You got judges, like, you got measures, you got all this stuff you need to,
all these different things at the city, state level that really you would see the impacts on the day-to-day. So understand that, know who you're voting for, vote in those elections. A lot of people who didn't like Biden, they said, why couldn't we have someone else who was really focused on all these things? And it's like, motherfucker, you just ran down Elizabeth Warren's platform. You just ran down. Did you vote in the primaries? Oh, no, you didn't. Now this is why we're left with this. Like, so even being engaged continuously, and I even have to do a better job if I think of compared to 4 years ago versus now of like paying more attention than just the presidential election. But yeah, be more involved in your community. Understand what's going on in your community.
Absolutely. And I think Van Jones, he said it best. He was on Red Table Talk a few weeks ago. And he said, you're not going to gain everything from, I'm paraphrasing, you're not going to gain everything from voting, but you will lose everything by not voting. And so I feel like that's a beautiful sentiment and just want to leave you guys with that. But hope you enjoyed our second episode of Queentown. And we will be back.
If you can, take the day off after the election too. You ain't gotta be. That's the mistake.
You know
I made.
what? I might do that.
I was around people who didn't vote and people who voted for that motherfucker, and I had to sit in an all-day workshop with them.
Damn, I might have to do that. That's actually a really good suggestion.
Yeah, that may be a plus for being remote. I'm just
well, true. Well, I love all the memes that's like black people when the camera's off, and it was like, and then that fake laughter when you unmute, and then you go back on mute. So true.
Another day we're gonna have to have a story about how my hair constantly changes. Niggas really don't know.
That's hilarious.
Niggas really don't know. But yes, this is our episode of Queen Tone. Until
we'll see y'all in 2 weeks.
This episode was produced by us and edited by Daner Cole. Our theme music is the track Same by Ricky Ells. Be sure to check it out on all streaming platforms. For questions, comments, feedback, or topic suggestions, hit us up at queentonepod@gmail.com. Be sure to also check us out and follow on Instagram and Twitter @QueenTonePod. Thanks for listening.